Hi, friends. For this month's episode, we have an adaptation of a classic but less well-known fairy tale called The Seven Ravens. A version can be found in Grimm's fairy tales, but there are many variants from across the world. 7 brothers are transformed into ravens when their father curses them for laziness, and their youngest sister sets off on a quest to find and rescue them. It offers a moral to be careful what you wish for, certainly, but it also speaks to the love and devotion of siblings and the fairy tale law that where there is a curse, there must also be a way to break it. Once upon a time, there was a woodcutter, and together he and his wife had 7 sons who they loved. After the 7th son was born, many years passed, and the couple thought that perhaps they would not have any more children. But when the youngest son was 6, the wife found that she was pregnant. By and by, she gave birth to a girl, but unlike her brothers, she was small and weak and sick. The parents worried that she would not survive. While they cared for her, they sent their 7 sons to a nearby spring that was rumored to have the magic power to cure sickness if you bathed in its waters. Each boy carried a bucket so that they could bring enough water back to warm a small bath for the sick baby. In their eagerness, they ran, dashing and tumbling and smashing through the woods to get to the spring. But in their rush, one brother tripped and fell, crashing onto his bucket and breaking it. "Well, we have 6 other buckets," he told himself. "That should be enough for our dear little sister." And he ran along after his brothers. But the other brothers were rushing too, and 3 more fell and broke their buckets into pieces. That left only 3 buckets. There were no more at home, so those 3 would have to be enough. They all made it to the spring, and the first brother dipped his bucket in. But none of them knew that a mischievous sprite lived in the spring and enjoyed grabbing buckets and dragging them to the bottom of the deep pool. As the brother lowered his bucket, he felt it pulled from his hands and saw it sinking down, down, down to the bottom of the deep spring. None of the brothers knew how to swim, and it might mean their death if they went in after it. They decided to try with 2 buckets and make multiple trips if they needed to. The youngest brother still had his bucket, so he dipped it in, and again the sprite grabbed it, wrenched it from his hands, and dragged it to the bottom. None of them could see the sprite, and they still didn't understand what was happening. They bid the middle brother to reach in, holding tight to his bucket, while the other brothers grabbed him around the waist and shoulders, just in case whatever was pulling the bucket should try to pull him in as well. As you might expect, the same thing happened. The sprite grabbed the bucket and pulled as hard as it could, tearing it out of the boy's hands and almost pulling him into the cold, deep water of the spring. His brothers barely managed to yank him back in time. But now there were no buckets. 3 were at the bottom of the spring, 4 were broken and unable to be used. Together, the 2 boys stood looking at the water, trying to determine what to do. They were about to form a chain and send the oldest brother down to the bottom to try and retrieve the buckets when something happened. Frustrated by how long the boys were taking to return with the important medicine for their sister, and terrified that she would be lost, the father shook his hand at the sky and exclaimed, "Those boys are probably just playing in the woods instead of fetching the water to save their sister. What useless children! I wish they'd all turn into ravens." No sooner had those words left his mouth than the boys were transformed. Their arms sprouted feathers and spread into wings. Their noses turned into sharp black beaks. Their bodies shortened and grew feathers as well. Their legs became thin and black. Their feet now sported 4 toes ending in claws. They had turned into giant ravens. As the spell took hold, they felt themselves pulled away and found that they were flying, far from the spring, far from their parents, and far from their sick little sister. When the woodcutter saw the 7 ravens burst above the trees and shoot across the sky, he knew what he had done, and he felt his heart break in despair. He went to tell his wife what had happened, and together they mourned their sons as they tried to save their daughter. Happily, the baby improved and grew into a healthy and kind child who was cared for by everyone. Her parents, in their grief, found that they could not speak of her brothers and never told her about what had happened to the 7 boys who had tried to save her when she was born and instead been cursed by their father and transformed into ravens. However, like all secrets, this could not be kept hidden forever. It happened that one day they had sent the girl to the market to buy bread, and as she was walking in between the stalls, she overheard 2 women talking. She heard one say, "Woodcutter," and the other say, "Such a shame," and her attention was caught. She hid behind a nearby stall and listened. Another woman had joined them. "Oh, were you talking about that poor woodcutter and his wife? That little girl is just the dearest child, but I always think it's so sad they lost those 7 boys." "So sad," the other women agreed, and moved on to another topic. 7 boys? What could that mean? The girl wondered. Did she have siblings she didn't know about? Could she have 7 siblings she didn't know about? She bought several fresh loaves of bread that her parents had sent her for and hurried home, burning with the desire to know. The story came rushing out of her parents when she asked, as if they had been holding their breath for 8 years and were expelling it in one gigantic whoosh. When she understood what had happened, the girl was confused. She asked her parents, "But why did you never try to find them? For surely if magic was able to turn them to ravens, magic can be found to turn them back again." They had no good answers. At first, they had been consumed with the effort to keep her alive and not lose their final child. Then, over time, their grief and her father's shame had built a wall around the topic that neither had tried to dismantle, until at last it was so thick and tall it could not be breached. Yet, all it took to blast it apart was a simple question from their daughter. Grief is a strange and complicated thing, and although she was only 8, the girl realized there was no better answer. But if her parents grieved for the children they lost, she longed for the siblings she had never known, who she had not even been aware of until this moment. Perhaps her parents did not believe that every curse had its cure, but she did, and with the confidence and urgency of youth, she made her plan. That very night, when her parents had gone to bed and the house was dark and still, she slipped on the family ring her parents had given her, crept to the kitchen, and prepared for a journey. She filled her water skin, carefully packed one of the loaves of bread she had brought home that afternoon, quietly put on her shoes and cloak, and snuck out into the night. As she walked, she called out to the moon, which shone bright and clear in the night sky. "Oh, moon, have you seen my brothers? They were transformed into 7 ravens and are lost to me. Won't you help me find them?" The moon looked down at her and replied, Child, I may have seen your brothers here and there, but I must watch over the whole world at night, and have no time to monitor the comings and goings of others. I cannot tell you where to find them. Perhaps you should ask my brother the sun. He may know where they can be found. The girl thanked the moon and continued walking to find the sun. When she had walked far enough that the moon faded away and the sun climbed over the horizon, she called to him, "Oh, sun, have you seen my brothers? They were transformed into 7 ravens and are lost to me. The moon did not know where they could be. Won't you help me find them?" The sun peered down at her and huffed. "Certainly not. I light the entire world by day and have no time to attend to such trivial matters. If Moon did not know, I can't imagine why you thought such a busy and important being as I would. I suppose you can ask my cousin, the West Wind, if you must know. He's always into everyone's business and every nook and cranny." Although he had been rather rude, the girl thanked the sun anyway and continued walking until she felt a breeze blowing from the west. "Oh, West Wind, have you seen my brothers? They were transformed into 7 ravens and are lost to me. Neither the moon nor the sun know where they could be." And, for good measure, she played to the wind's ego, for it was known to be vain. "I've heard it said that you know all the secrets of the world, that nothing can hide from you. Won't you help me find them?" Hearing her words, the wind whipped into a frenzy around her, swirling her hair and her cloak, and almost knocking her off her feet. As it rushed around her, she heard the wind speak. "Ah, wise child, to seek the only being who knows all that happens in this world. You are right that nothing can hide from me on land or sky. Yes, child, I have seen your brothers," the wind bragged to her. "But I can't imagine the knowledge will be of any use to you. A little mortal like you will never be able to reach them." The wind trailed off. The girl had nothing to offer the wind as payment for its secret. She knew that it wouldn't want any of the few things she had brought with her. What good would a cloak or a loaf of bread be to the wind? But he clearly liked flattery, and that was a payment she was more than happy to offer in exchange for such important information. "Surely a great and powerful being such as yourself would know the way for me to reach them," she exclaimed. "Why, who wrecks the greatest ships at sea? Who blows the freezing winds and snow that shut every living thing on earth into their homes and dens? Who blows the clouds and rain that keep us all alive? You can fit through any crack. Nothing can escape your domain. I can't imagine that a powerful being like you wouldn't know the way to them." She gushed and complimented and waited. The wind considered her words. "Of course I know," it breathed in a swoosh of pride. "Your brothers live within the glass mountain. They fly out each morning at dawn and return each evening at dusk. But their magic doesn't extend to you. You cannot enter the mountain without the key, and the only one who makes keys to the glass mountain is my cousin, the morning star. You'll never get in without her help." "You truly are the cleverest, O West Wind," the girl cried in delight, clasping her hands together and smiling through grateful tears. "I don't suppose you could take me to her to ask. It would be a long time for me to find her since I'm not nearly as strong and swift as you, and I imagine you could take me there, well, in moments." "I am the fastest being there is," the wind agreed. "Very well. And before she even had time to say thank you, the wind had scooped her up and whisked her into the sky. They traveled so quickly that it felt as if she hardly blinked, and she was there, gently set down by the west wind before a beautiful shining star. "Ah, cousin!" the star exclaimed. "Who have you brought me then? I wasn't not expecting visitors." "Oh, she'll tell you," the wind grunted, and whirled himself away to go find other secrets and adventures. "Thank you," the girl called after him as he departed. She turned her attention back to the star. "Oh, morning star," she said, "my 7 brothers were turned into ravens by my father's curse and are lost to me. The west wind tells me they reside within the glass mountain, but that I must have a key to enter that only you can provide. Won't you help me reach them?" "Ah, I know well the sad story of your brothers, child, and long have I hoped that someone would come to rescue them," the morning star replied kindly. "Here is a key to the glass mountain. A word of caution, the spell that binds them has caused them to forget who they are. To break the curse, you must help them to remember who they are. Until they do, they will only know themselves as ravens, and they will not know you at all. Ye could come to some harm if they decide you are a threat. Take care with them." The star handed the girl a large key made entirely of glass. It shone in the star's light and rested heavily in the girl's palm. "Thank you, morning star. I'll be careful," the girl promised. "But I don't know how to find the glass mountain. Can you help me?" "Child, when it is time for me to rise, I will take you there on a beam of my light," the star promised. And together they passed some companionable hours, talking of this and of that, until it was time for the star to assume its position in the early morning sky. The girl thanked the star again, and the star directed a beam of its light downwards to the ominous-looking spiked ridges of the glass mountain. Following the star's beam down, the girl found herself standing in front of a large keyhole on the side of the mountain. The outside of the mountain looked normal enough, if very jagged and rough, but the source of its name became clear once she pushed the key into the hole and turned. A door materialized and swung open, revealing a dazzling passageway into the mountain. Everything inside was glass: the rocks, the floor, the ceiling. It all shone in the light from the early morning sun. The girl quietly and carefully slipped into the cave, the door swinging shut behind her and disappearing back into the side of the mountain as if it had never been. She pocketed the key in case she needed it and moved forward. It wasn't dark in the passageway exactly. The glass gave off a faint light that was enough to see by. As she walked, she considered how to help her brothers remember themselves without revealing herself and frightening them. She didn't want them or herself to be hurt. Before long, the passageway opened into a large room with a soaring ceiling. Glass stalactites hung down, somehow emanating light that filled the chamber with a warm glow. Stalagmites reached up from the floor to offer the same gentle light, and the center of the room was filled with an enormous glass table surrounded by 7 glass stools. On the table were laid out 7 cups and plates, and the girl could see that they were heaped with what looked like breakfast, and the cups filled with some steaming drink. "It must be almost time for their breakfast," she whispered to herself, and that was when the idea came to her, fully formed. She dashed across the cavern and pulled out her water skin. Into each steaming cup she added a splash of water from home. Then she took out her loaf of bread, and onto each plate she added a chunk of the good sweet bread from home. Finally, she took off her family ring and pushed it into the remaining loaf of bread, which she then placed in the center of the table. As she did so, she heard the clattering of many tapping claws walking across the glass floor of the cave. She darted away from the table and hid herself back in the passageway, tucking herself into a cranny so that she could see and hear what happened in the room, but, hopefully, could not be seen or heard herself. She finished hiding herself just in time as 7 enormous ravens walked and hopped into the room and took themselves to the table. Each raven immediately dipped his beak into the steaming cup to take a drink. "Brothers," the largest raven said, "does your drink taste different than usual? It tastes familiar to me, but I know it's different than normal, and I can't say why I'd remember this flavor." Each of the other 6 ravens murmured their agreement. It did taste different. It did remind them of something, but they had no idea what. "Brothers, did you try this bread?" the smallest raven exclaimed. "It tastes like, I don't know, it tastes like home." "Well, we are home, so of course it tastes like home," one of the other ravens laughed. But then each one also tried the bread, and each bird stilled and quieted, deep in thought. "Not this home, somewhere else, somewhere I can't remember," the smallest raven said. "Well, look, there's some left here in the center. We can all have some more," another raven said. But as it began to tear the bread into pieces to share, the ring dropped out of the loaf and fell onto the glass table. The clang of the ring striking the glass echoed in the chamber. "What is that?" The largest raven stared at the ring, cocking its head to one side and then another. "That's Mother's ring!" the smallest raven cried. "Mother?" some of the other ravens asked. And then, "Mother!" they exclaimed. I remember," one of the middle ravens exclaimed. "The water, the bread, the ring, these are all things from our real home, our human home, from when we were boys." "If these things are here, is it possible that someone has come to break our curse?" the largest raven asked. Seeing that her plan to help them remember had been more successful than she could have hoped, the girl stepped out of the passage and into the light of the cavern. "Brothers," she called to them, "I have come to break your curse. I'm sorry it took me so long. I didn't even know you existed until a few days ago. I set out immediately to find you. I know you tried to save me when I was a baby, and I am here to do the same for you." Sister?" the smallest raven asked. As he spoke the word sister, all 7 ravens were transformed. Where giant birds had perched upon stools, there now sat 7 young men, older than they had been when they were changed, but human and whole and glowing with happiness. "Sister!" they all cried, and ran to the girl to gather her in a fierce group hug filled with laughter and tears and exclamations of love and delight. And when they made their way back to their cottage, with some assistance from the extremely curious West Wind, who wanted to have the full story so that he could be the one who got to spread the tale and continue proving he knew more than anyone else, they found that their parents, who had been shadowed in grief they hid for so long, were transformed as well at the sight of their 8 children appearing before the door to their cottage. Their sorrow and regret were washed away in the tears of joy and the exclamations of delight they made at seeing their children once more. No one could expect that any of these children would live a simple, boring life after the kinds of adventures they had had, but the West Wind tells me quite confidently that they all did live happily ever after as a family once again. The end. That's it for this month. Stay tuned for the next Foggy Oak fairy tale, and in the meantime, you can check out our Instagram at Foggy Oak Fairy Tales, or make my day by leaving a rating and review of the podcast on the platform where you listen. Thanks, and see you soon.